Chapter 1 Return to the orchard. Reggie Parks had forgotten how the Midwest smelled in early spring, like rain-soaked soil, thawing earth, and the faint sweetness of last year's leaves breaking down into something new. After 3 days of driving, his lower back felt fused to the seat of the used pickup he'd bought with settlement money. But when the farmhouse came into view, his shoulders finally loosened. The old white and green house sat in the middle of a wide patchwork of fields. Beyond it, rows of trees, thin, hopeful, not quite leafed out yet, stretched across the land. He remembered running through those rows as a kid, racing the dogs, getting in trouble for knocking over buckets of figs. Now the place looked exactly as he remembered, yet different in the way everything seemed different these days. He parked near the barn. Or rather, the building that looked like a barn until you stepped inside and realized the second floor was less hay loft and more botanical experiment in vertical living. His grandfather had called it a practical innovation. His grandmother called it a barn that thinks it's a city greenhouse. Reggie had always loved it. Before he could grab any luggage, the front door banged open. "Well, I'll be," his grandfather said, striding out with the same restless energy Reggie remembered. "He actually came home." "I told you he would," his grandmother said from behind him. "You need to stop predicting doom. It scares the tomatoes." Reggie laughed, and suddenly the tightness in his chest broke. He walked toward them, and his grandmother wrapped him in a hug that smelled like lavender and cinnamon. "Hi, Grandma. You're too thin," she declared, pulling back just far enough to pinch his cheek. "We'll fix that. You'll gain it all back with proper food. Not that takeout nonsense cities try to pass off as meals." His grandfather clapped him on the back hard enough to jolt a rib. "Good to have you here, son." "Good to be here," Reggie replied, and to his own surprise he meant it. They helped him carry his bags. Well, his grandmother tried to, but his grandfather blocked her. "You've got arthritis," his grandfather told her. "You've got stubbornness," she shot back. "Yes, and both are flaring up today," he replied, tugging the suitcase from her grip. Their bickering filled the air, familiar and comforting, and Reggie found himself smiling more in 5 minutes than he had in the last 5 months. The guest room above the barn hadn't changed much. The quilt his grandmother made years ago still covered the bed. The wood floors were polished. Sunlight filtered through the small windows, illuminating shelves lined with old books, seed catalogs, and mason jars full of buttons that had probably been collected for no reason other than they might be useful someday. He dropped his bags and exhaled. A new start, again, for the third time in 3 years. But unlike the others, this one didn't feel forced. When he went back downstairs, his grandparents were in the greenhouse upstairs watering trays of herbs. "You're just in time," his grandmother said. "We need help prepping for the weekend market." Reggie blinked. "Already? I thought spring markets didn't start until next month." "Oh, people have been pacing in that old drive-in parking lot since March," she said. "They're hungry for fresh herbs, and we're not one to deny them." His grandfather handed him a watering can. "You remember how to do this?" "Let's hope so. I don't want to be responsible for killing anything within my first hour." His grandmother sighed. "Plants are generous, dear. People not always. But plants? They usually give you another chance." He wasn't sure if that was gardening advice or life advice. Probably both. Later that afternoon, they headed to the flea market to check their booth supplies. Even though the market wouldn't open until the weekend, the place was already buzzing with vendors setting up. The old drive-in screen loomed above them, tall and white and silent, like an aging guardian watching over everything. His grandparents' booth sat along the middle row. Hand-painted signs advertised fresh herbs, local veggies, and the ever-popular figs, coming soon. A few farmers waved as they passed. "Reggie, is that really you?" The voice made him turn. Claire Meyers stood a few feet away holding a clipboard. She wore jeans, a Navy chef's jacket, and an expression halfway between surprise and amusement. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot, and a few strands escaped, framing a face that hadn't changed much since high school. Still bright, still quick to smile, still striking in a natural way that didn't require effort. He hadn't seen her in over 20 years. "Hey," he said, trying not to sound awkward. "Claire. Hi." She crossed the distance in a few steps. "You're back in town? Just got in this morning." "Well, welcome back." Her smile softened. "Your grandparents mentioned they were hoping you'd visit, but they didn't say you were staying." "I think I am," he admitted. "For a while." "That's great. We can always use more people who know the difference between cilantro and parsley." Reggie chuckled. "It's not my strongest skill, but I'll work on it. I'll hold you to that." His grandmother called from behind the booth. "Claire dear, are you coming by tomorrow for your basil?" "Of course," Claire replied. Then she looked at Reggie again. "Maybe I'll see you then?" "Yeah," he said. "I'll be around." She waved and headed toward a cluster of food vendors, and Reggie watched her go, trying to ignore the unexpected flutter of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Interest, maybe, or just the shock of familiarity in a world that had felt foreign for too long. His grandfather nudged him. "She's single, you know." "Grandpa," Reggie muttered. "I'm just saying." That girl always had a good head on her shoulders. And she's busy, his grandmother added, running that restaurant of hers. But she could use someone who reminds her to slow down. Reggie pinched the bridge of his nose. I literally just got here. His grandparents exchanged a knowing look that made him long for the kind of innocence where people didn't assume every conversation with the opposite sex meant something romantic. Still, he couldn't deny the warmth in his chest. Maybe he needed that warmth. Maybe he needed this place more than he realized. That evening, after dinner, his grandmother's herb-roasted chicken, which tasted better than anything he'd eaten in at least a year, Reggie wandered out to the orchard. The sky glowed with late-day color, oranges and pinks fading into soft blue. The trees were still bare, but buds had formed at the tips of the branches, little signs of life waiting for the right moment to burst open. He walked between the rows, hands in his pockets, breathing slowly. This land had held him when he was young. Maybe it could hold him now. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Probably a spam email or some lawyer checking in about paperwork. Nothing urgent. Nothing he wanted to think about tonight. He stopped beside the fig tree at the far end of the orchard. It had always been his favorite, temperamental, stubborn, but capable of producing fruit sweeter than anything found in a grocery store. He rested a hand on the rough bark. You and me both, he murmured, trying again. The wind carried the faint hum of insects and the fading laughter of his grandparents from the porch. For the first time since everything in his life had fallen apart, Reggie felt something close to steady. Not fixed, not healed, just steady. And as he headed back toward the house, the lights from the barn greenhouse shining warmly over the field, he felt something else too. A beginning. Chapter 2, Claire's Complications. Claire Meyers was elbow-deep in a box of produce when the restaurant phone began its 5th round of ringing. She glared at it as if she could silence it through willpower alone. Please, she muttered, just give me 10 minutes of calm. The phone, predictably, ignored her and kept shrilling. She wiped her hands on her apron and snatched up the receiver. Blue Spoon Bistro, this is Claire. A familiar voice answered, far too chipper for a Wednesday morning. Boss, we're out of heavy cream again. Claire closed her eyes. Evan, we ordered 15 quarts on Monday. Yeah, but we used all of it for the panna cotta special. And then Chef Janie said she needed extra for the herb whip topping, which we don't offer on Wednesdays. Claire cut in. Well, we did yesterday. She pinched the bridge of her nose. Evan, get 2 quarts from the cafe next door. Tell them I'll replace it later. And stop improvising menu items without telling me. Got it, boss. He hung up far too enthusiastically. Claire leaned against the counter and exhaled. The kitchen was alive with early prep. Knives chopping, pans clattering, someone humming off key. She loved it, this symphony of controlled chaos. Yet lately everything felt one beat off. Her sous chef was talented but distractible. Her dishwasher kept quitting and returning in a cycle she barely questioned anymore. And she was on a self-declared dating hiatus because she didn't have time to deal with small-town gossip. Which meant she had absolutely no business noticing that Reggie Parks looked better at 41 than he ever did in high school. She had spent the night after seeing him replaying their brief conversation like an embarrassing daydream. She hadn't expected to feel anything, especially not curiosity, and definitely not warmth. People came back to their hometowns all the time. It didn't mean anything. Still, she found herself checking her hair twice before leaving the restaurant to pick up herbs from the orchard greenhouse. The greenhouse above the barn was warmer than outside, filled with earthy humidity and the scent of basil and rosemary. Reggie stood on a ladder adjusting a row of hanging tomato buckets. His jeans and t-shirt were already smudged with soil. Hey, Claire called. He startled so hard the ladder wobbled. She rushed forward instinctively. Whoa, careful. I meant to do that, he said, steadying himself with exaggerated dignity. She bit back a laugh. If you say so. Reggie climbed down, cheeks flushed from effort or embarrassment. She couldn't tell. Didn't expect you this early. I came to grab the herb order for the lunchtime menu. She lifted the empty crate. And to make sure you weren't destroying anything up here. He gestured around helplessly. I've only dropped 1 bucket. As if summoned by fate, the bucket he just tightened slipped free, tumbling end over end before exploding on the ground beside him, coating his boots and one leg, completely in rich potting soil. Claire slapped a hand over her mouth. Oh no. Oh my God. Reggie looked down at himself. I don't suppose laughing with me would make this any better? She doubled over, breathless, trying to contain her laughter. I'm so sorry. I swear I'm not laughing at... Okay, no, I'm absolutely laughing. But only because you survived it. You know, he said, brushing dirt off with little success. I used to have a dignified life. Claire snorted. Sure you did. He tried not to smile, but the corner of his mouth betrayed him. Grandma says you're one of their best customers. That's because they grow the best herbs. She inhaled deeply. This rosemary is practically a religious experience. Well, then I'm glad I didn't kill it. You came close. Their eyes met, and for a second, the greenhouse felt warmer. Claire looked away quickly, clearing her throat. So, how's settling in? She asked. Good, actually. Better than I expected. He wiped his hands on a towel. It's nice, simple, quiet. Quiet can be good, she said, then added with a rueful smile. Unless you run a restaurant. He chuckled. I remember hearing you were opening one. Didn't think you'd still be doing the whole cooking for a living thing. Oh, I don't cook for a living. I cook, organize, manage crises, put out metaphorical fires, and occasionally literal ones. Literal. My sous chef once turned a creme brulee torch into a flamethrower. That sounds dangerous. And yet, she said, I'm still here. She reached into a tray, selecting vibrant sprigs of basil. So what about you? Planning to stay long? Reggie hesitated. I think so. Helping out here. Maybe figuring out what's next. That's not a bad plan. It's the only one I've got right now. Claire's expression softened, but she didn't pry. She sensed, correctly, that his past was something he hadn't unpacked yet. He had the look of someone rebuilding quietly, brick by unseen brick. She handed him the crate. Can you load me up? He filled it carefully, handing her bundles of herbs wrapped in twine. Careful. Some of these are delicate. Please, she said. I've handled men fiercer than a sprig of thyme. He raised an eyebrow. Is that a chef thing or a life thing? Both. The air between them softened again, humming with something unspoken. Interest, maybe. But she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and stepped back. Well, she said, I should get going before Evan burns the cafe next door. Is that a real possibility? With him? Absolutely. I'll pray for the cafe. She laughed. Do. They need all the help they can get. As she turned to leave, she glanced over her shoulder, just once, and caught Reggie watching her with a dazed, almost confused expression, like he hadn't expected her presence to tug at him. Claire swallowed a smile, stepped outside, and let the cool air clear her head. She did not have time for this, and she definitely didn't have time for someone as quietly compelling as Reggie Parks. But the flutter in her stomach argued otherwise. Back at the restaurant, Evan met her at the door holding 2 large tubs of borrowed cream. Hey boss, he said, shifting nervously. So, funny story. No, Claire said immediately. Whatever it is, I refuse. Okay, but hear me out. No, because I definitely didn't accidentally set the corner of the prep table on fire. She closed her eyes. Evan. It was a small fire. She massaged her temples. I was gone for 30 minutes. Right, which is why you can see how much progress we made. She opened one eye. The kitchen looked exactly the same as when she left it, except for a suspiciously charred spot near the sink. I'm moving you to salad prep, she said. For how long? Indefinitely. He saluted her, overly dramatic. Yes, chef. Claire dropped the herb crate onto the counter and took a steadying breath. Things were complicated enough, and they were about to get a whole lot messier, because as she unpacked the basil, rosemary, and thyme, she caught herself smiling for no good reason except that Reggie Parks had accidentally dumped half a greenhouse on himself. And that, she decided with both dread and delight, was a very bad sign. Chapter 3 Market Mishaps and Soft Starts. Saturday morning arrived with the bright, insistent cheerfulness that only small Midwestern towns seemed able to produce. The flea market, set in the sprawling lot of the old drive-in theater, was already humming by the time Reggie and his grandparents pulled up in the truck. Vendors bustled about like bees. Folding tables clattered open, crates thumped onto concrete, and the scent of cinnamon pastries drifted across the lot, taunting everyone who hadn't eaten breakfast. Reggie yawned as he unloaded boxes of herbs. I forgot people woke up at 6 for this, he said. You forgot the joy of earning an honest day's money, his grandmother countered, already fussing with the tablecloth. I didn't forget, he said. I think it just repressed the memory. His grandfather laughed. No time for repression. Customers coming in 10. I thought the market opened at 8. It does, his grandfather said. And these people arrive at 7:30 to get the best produce. So move. Reggie moved. He arranged tomatoes, red, yellow, and a mottled heirloom variety his grandmother insisted were prettier than any bouquet. He set out bundles of herbs tied with jute string and stacked recycled paper cartons of mixed greens. The booth looked bright and welcoming, like a farm-to-table Pinterest board come to life. His grandmother added a basket of apples to the front corner, the fruit polished to a shine. Those look good, Reggie said. They are good. Don't drop them. Why would I drop? He didn't finish the sentence, because he turned and nearly collided with her. Claire. She stood there with a half smile, hands tucked into the pockets of her light jacket. Morning. The basket tipped. The apples rolled like they'd been fired from a catapult, scattering across the concrete. One bounced off Claire's shoe. Reggie stared down at them in horror. No, 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 Claire burst out laughing. Did those apples owe you money or something? I swear they weren't suicidal 30 seconds ago. He dropped to his knees, scrambling to gather the runaways. Claire knelt to help, still grinning. Is this a tradition? She asked. Every time I see you, something goes flying? Looks like I'm building a reputation. Oh, definitely, she said. I'm giving it 2 weeks before the rumor mill upgrades you to local chaos magnet. He groaned. Please tell me you're joking. I would never joke about town gossip, she said solemnly. It has its own gravitational pull. They finished corralling the apples, and when Claire straightened, she brushed a stray hair behind her ear, her smile softening. Your booth looks great, she said. My grandparents did most of it, he replied. I'm just manual labor. Don't sell yourself short. The apples clearly respond to your leadership. He laughed, and for a moment the world felt oddly light. A couple of customers approached, and Claire stepped aside while his grandparents launched into their practice sales pitch, offering herb suggestions and answering questions about growing conditions. Reggie peeked at her. Done shopping for the restaurant already? Not yet, she said. I stopped here first. You know, supporting local farmers and the guy who throws fruit at me. I didn't throw them, he said. They just escaped. Very rowdy apples. I'll keep an eye on them. She wandered toward the herb bundles, picking up a few rosemary sprigs and inhaling deeply. These smell incredible, she said. You really are lucky to be helping out here. I'm just glad I'm useful, Reggie said. It's been a while since I felt like that. She looked at him, not pitying, not prying, but with a quiet recognition that made his chest tighten. Before he could say anything else, a voice shouted from behind them. Hey, Claire, we still on for the tasting menu today? A pair of regular customers waved at her from another booth. Claire called back, yes, noon. Save room. She turned to Reggie. I should finish picking up what I need. But if you have time after the market closes, want to grab coffee? To talk about maybe doing a supplier partnership? My restaurant could feature your herbs more prominently. Reggie blinked. Business partnership. Yes. Her expression was carefully neutral. Business, right? Sure. Business. She smirked, just barely. Great. I'll text you. She left with a little wave, weaving gracefully through the crowd. Reggie stared after her, suddenly aware of his grandmother standing beside him. Well, she said, voice lilting with mischief. Seemed like a nice conversation. It was, he said too quickly. And she invited you for coffee, his grandfather added from behind the table. As a business meeting, Reggie insisted. His grandparents exchanged a look so unconvincing it bordered on insulting. It was business, Reggie said again, stacking apple cartons with excessive focus. Of course, his grandmother said sweetly. Business. Absolutely. Reggie ignored them, or tried to, because the truth sat in his chest, stubborn and buzzing with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Coffee wasn't just coffee. And Claire? Claire definitely wasn't just a business contact. The market grew busier as the morning went on. Reggie found himself enjoying it more than he expected. Customers asked questions about basil varieties, debated the merits of cherry versus heirloom tomatoes, and complimented the freshness of the greens. One older woman even insisted he pick out her cilantro, because young people have better instinct. By noon, the booth was nearly sold out. Reggie wiped his forehead with the back of his arm. Is it always this busy? In spring? Yes, his grandfather said. People emerging from winter want to feel alive again. Seems like they're doing it through excessive vegetable purchasing. Could be worse, his grandmother said. They could take up recreational sewing. I think sewing is, Reggie, she said seriously. Don't defend sewing. I still have fabric stored from 1983. He held up his hands. Fair enough. They began packing up the remaining crates, and his grandmother nudged him lightly with her elbow. Go on, she said. Get cleaned up. Meet your friend. She's not. Business, yes, she said, waving him off. You've told us. Repeatedly. His grandfather chuckled. Just don't spill anything on her. Reggie groaned. I'm going home. But he was smiling, and the flutter in his stomach returned. Stronger now, more insistent. Not dread, not fear. Possibility. Something alive, like the crisp sweetness of spring air. Something he wasn't sure he deserved, but maybe, just maybe, he could allow himself to reach for. He headed toward the truck, the midday sun warm on his back, hope creeping in like a shy but persistent guest. Coffee would be good. Talking would be good. And Claire, well, Claire would probably laugh at him again. He found he didn't mind that at all. Chapter 4 Rumors, Realities, and Reluctance. By Monday morning, the market weekend felt like a blur. Reggie had spent the rest of Saturday replaying his coffee with Claire. How surprisingly easy the conversation was. How she'd leaned forward when he talked about the orchard. How she'd laughed when he informed her basil was his sworn enemy after he accidentally sat on a bundle years ago. Nothing about it felt like a date. And yet, it didn't feel not like a date either. He was still chewing on that fact when he arrived at the greenhouse, a steaming mug of his grandmother's herbal tea in hand. The sunlight filtered through the glass ceiling, scattering warm geometric patches across the rows of mint, parsley, thyme, and the new round of sprouting tomato pots. His grandfather was sorting irrigation hoses, muttering at a tangle so severe it might have been alive. There's gossip going around, his grandfather said without looking up. Reggie paused mid-step. About what? His grandmother stepped in from the stairwell carrying a basket of seed packets. About you, dear. He blinked. What did I do? You had coffee with Claire Meyers, she said matter-of-factly. And someone saw it. Okay. But that was business, his grandmother echoed with a patient smile. We know. His grandfather straightened with a groan. Town says otherwise. Reggie rubbed his forehead. What exactly are they saying? That you and Claire are secretly engaged, his grandmother said. Reggie nearly dropped his tea. Engaged? How did they get that from coffee? People are bored, his grandfather said. And you were seen talking animatedly. That's suspicious behavior. Reggie stared at them. I was explaining heirloom tomato cultivation. That'll do it, his grandfather said gravely. No one discusses tomatoes with such passion unless courtship is involved. His grandmother waved a hand. Oh, leave the boy alone. It's just gossip. It'll pass when the next exciting thing happens. And by exciting, I mean Delia Marsh discovering a new type of pickled vegetable. Reggie sighed, but a reluctant smile tugged at his mouth. The absurdity of it all was almost comforting. Almost. Still, he couldn't shake the flutter of anxiety. He didn't want Claire dragged into rumors, especially not when she had a business to run and a reputation to uphold. He checked his phone. Nothing from her yet. Maybe that was good. Maybe it meant she hadn't heard. Or maybe she'd heard and was deliberately avoiding him to escape the small-town rumor hurricane he'd unwittingly summoned. He tried to shake the thought and focused on the greenhouse tasks instead. Claire didn't hear the rumors until lunchtime. She was in the middle of shouting instructions while juggling 3 orders when the cafe owner from next door popped into the kitchen, waving a napkin like it was urgent documentation. Claire, she whispered loudly. I'm kind of busy. Claire shouted over the whir of the blender. It's important. Claire turned, exasperated. What? The cafe owner, Molly, leaned in with a grin. I heard you're engaged. Claire stared at her. I'm sorry, what? With Reggie Parks. Claire's brain did an immediate hard reboot. Reggie, she repeated flatly. Parks, the same one who moved back 2 weeks ago. That's the one. What part of us having coffee suggests engagement? Sweetheart, this is a small town, Molly said with a sympathetic pat on her arm. 2 adults having coffee is practically a proposal. Claire pressed both hands to her temples. Oh my God. Congratulations, Molly said cheerfully. Then she pivoted on her heel and strolled out of the kitchen, humming like she'd delivered excellent news. Claire stood frozen as a line cook tapped her shoulder. Chef? Earners. She swung back around and resumed directing the kitchen, but her mind kept drifting to Reggie. She hadn't expected gossip. She hadn't expected people to even notice, and she definitely hadn't expected to feel heat creeping up her neck at the idea of being paired with him. Not out of embarrassment, but something else. Something warmer. Something hopeful and deeply inconvenient. When the lunch rush finally slowed, she grabbed her keys. I'm heading out, she told Evan. For errands or escape? He asked. Yes, she replied, and left before he asked more questions. The orchard was quiet when she arrived, the early afternoon sun casting soft shadows across the fields. She found Reggie stacking empty pots beside the greenhouse. Hey, she called. He looked up, startled, though she was starting to think he always looked that way when she arrived. Oh hey, what's up? She crossed her arms, leaning one hip against a workbench. So, apparently we're engaged. His face went blank in the most spectacular way. You've heard. Oh, I've heard. From 3 different people. One even asked if we wanted her homemade quilt as a wedding gift. Please tell me you said no. I panicked and said maybe. Reggie dropped the pot he was holding, clattered loudly. Claire, I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I didn't want. She blinked. You didn't want to marry me within 48 hours of drinking coffee together? Shocking. He groaned. I didn't mean it like that. She laughed, finally letting the tension slip from her shoulders. Relax. I'm not mad. It's just ridiculous. Town gossip always is, he said. But if it's making things awkward for you, it's not, she said quickly. Then softer. Well, only in a funny way. His shoulders eased a little. She hesitated. There was something on the tip of her tongue, something she hadn't planned on voicing. But the warmth of the greenhouse, the way the sunlight hit his hair, the earnestness in his eyes, it all nudged her forward. I know people talk, she said. And I know you've had a rough few years. You don't need rumors added to that. He swallowed. I just don't want you caught up in my mess. Reggie. She stepped closer. Talking to you isn't a mess. He looked away, almost shy, almost uncertain. I haven't exactly been a catch lately. That's not how I see it, she replied softly. You're rebuilding. There's strength in that. He blinked, stunned. Claire. And for what it's worth, she added, leaning against the table again. I had a good time Saturday, business or not. His mouth quirked. Mostly business. Sure, let's pretend. They shared a long look, gentler, deeper, the air between them thickening with something they both felt but neither named. Then her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She groaned. If that's Evan, I swear, She glanced at the screen and winced. It is Evan. He set something on fire. Reggie raised an eyebrow. Again. Apparently so. She backed toward her car. I'll see you later? Yeah, he said. Definitely. She paused with one hand on her door. And don't worry about the rumors, okay? If anyone asks, I'll just say we're planning a long engagement. He laughed, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks even as she pretended she hadn't said it to make him smile. As she drove away, Reggie stood beside the greenhouse, hands in his pockets, watching the dust her tires kicked up. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like an empty road stretching into uncertainty. It felt like possibility, like warmth, like Claire's laughter. And he found himself wanting, cautiously but undeniably, to step toward it. Chapter 5, Cooking Lessons and Emotional Overgrowth. The Blue Spoon Bistro smelled like garlic, butter, and panic. Reggie paused just inside the kitchen doorway, taking in the scene. Pots clattering, pans sizzling, a line cook shouting for more time, and Evan sprinting past carrying something that looked suspiciously on fire. Is that, Reggie pointed. It's under control, Evan yelled, extinguishing the flames with a pan lid. Claire appeared beside him, hair pinned back, sleeves rolled, a smudge of flour across one cheek. This, she said with the tone of someone clinging to sanity by a thread, is why I invited you after hours. Because your sous chef is a pyromaniac? Because I promised you I'd teach you how to cook something with all those tomatoes you're growing. And because Evan isn't allowed near the stove after 3 small incidents involving caramel. Evan shouted from across the kitchen. The caramel fought back. It boiled, Claire snapped. Violently, Reggie tried to hide his grin. Are you sure this is a good idea? No, Claire admitted. But we're doing it anyway. She grabbed an apron from a hook, shook it out, and handed it to him. He tied it awkwardly, and the bow ended up on his hip. Claire stepped closer. That's not how you tie an apron. I panicked. Here. She untied it gently, looping the strings around his back with practiced ease. Don't strangle your kidneys with it. Lower the knot. Like this. She tied the bow at his waist, fingers brushing his side. Reggie suddenly became very aware of how warm the kitchen was. There, she said, stepping back. Now you look like a functional human. That's a huge compliment coming from you. Don't push it. She led him to the prep station, where she'd laid out ingredients like soldiers ready for deployment. Heirloom tomatoes, garlic, basil, olive oil, sea salt, and a loaf of crusty bread. We're keeping it simple, she said. Bruschetta. No flames. No danger. No opportunity for you to cause structural damage. I resent that implication. You dropped an entire bucket of tomatoes on yourself 2 days ago. Okay, that one's fair. She handed him a knife. Reggie took it and froze. Are you sure about this? It's a tomato, not a hostage. You'll be fine. He sliced. He was not fine. The tomato, which required 0 effort to cut, somehow shot sideways across the board like it was attempting escape. Claire blinked. That is not a physics I've encountered. Reggie sighed. I told you. Tomatoes fear me. Tomatoes don't have emotions. You didn't see the look this one gave me. She laughed, scooping up the runaway slice. Try again. Less force, more finesse. He tried again. This time the knife slipped, skidding into the cutting board with a clack. Better, she said encouragingly. In that the tomato is still on the board. That's a low bar. This is a low-pressure lesson. They continued, Claire giving gentle, patient instructions, Reggie doing his best not to maim anything, especially himself. At one point, he chopped garlic too aggressively, launching a piece across the kitchen. It hit Evan. Hey, Evan shouted. Garlic assault. Relax, Claire said. You probably deserved it. Evan rubbed his shoulder. Well, yeah, but that's not the point. Eventually, after far more trial and error than the recipe required, the bruschetta came together. Toasted bread topped with tomatoes, basil, garlic, and a drizzle of olive oil. Claire leaned on the counter, admiring their work. Not bad for your first dish. Reggie wiped his hands. I feel like I should get a certificate of completion. You get to eat it instead. They each took a piece. Reggie bit incautiously, ready to be underwhelmed by the fruits of his chaotic labor. But it was good. Shockingly good. Wow, he said. Claire brightened. Yeah. It tastes like something from an actual restaurant. It is something from an actual restaurant. Right? But I helped make it. And it didn't kill you. Or anyone else. A victory on all fronts. They finished the bruschetta in comfortable silence, broken only by the soft hum of the kitchen cooling down for the night. Then Claire spoke, voice quieter. You know, you're good at this. Making a mess? Being open to learning. Taking your time. Not giving up when things fall apart. A lot of people can't do that. He swallowed. I didn't really have a choice. You did, she said softly. You chose not to let hard things make you harder. Reggie looked down at the crumbs on the counter, unsure what to say. Compliments still felt like foreign currency. Unexpected, undeserved, slightly overwhelming. But Claire didn't push. She never pushed. She simply watched him with an expression somewhere between kindness and curiosity, like she was trying to memorize him without meaning to. He cleared his throat. So, this dish, think it would sell well if I put it on the menu? Absolutely. Especially with your tomatoes later in the season. You think people would care where they're from? Oh, they'll care, she said. Farm to table sells. And if I can say they're from your orchard, fresh from just down the road, that's gold. He frowned. You don't have to oversell it to make me feel better. I'm not overselling. She nudged him with her elbow. I'm a chef. I know good ingredients. He met her eyes. Something in her gaze startled him, warmth, interest, something unmistakably genuine. He stepped back instinctively, not because he didn't want it, but because wanting anything still felt dangerous. Claire read the shift immediately. She didn't step closer. She didn't step away either. Reggie, she said gently, you don't have to rush anything, not this partnership, not anything else. I know, he said quietly. I'm just figuring things out. I know, she repeated. And I'm not going anywhere. The room felt softer, warmer, more open. For a moment he imagined staying like this, learning to cook, making terrible knife cuts, laughing with her, building something new without fear. But imagining and allowing were different things. Claire didn't press further. Instead, she glanced at the clock and clapped her hands once. Okay, time to clean up before Evan tries to set something else on fire. Already did. Evan called from the dish pit. See, Claire said. Disaster prevention is a full-time job. Reggie helped her clean, feeling lighter than he had in years. Maybe cooking lessons weren't just about food. Maybe they were about letting life be messy and still worth savoring. Maybe they were about starting over, this time with laughter. And maybe, just maybe, with someone who didn't run when things got hard. Chapter 6, The Ex returns, briefly and badly. Reggie was halfway through reorganizing the greenhouse's irrigation lines when his phone chimed with a notification he didn't expect, and definitely didn't want. Laura Morgan subject. Can we talk? His throat tightened. He stared at the screen long enough for the greenhouse's humidity to bead across his forehead. Laura hadn't contacted him in almost 2 years. Not since the divorce papers were mailed to him like a utility bill she'd forgotten to pay. He considered deleting the email without opening it. But curiosity or old habit won out. He tapped the message. Reggie, I've been thinking about things and wanted to reach out. I think we need closure. I'd like to talk. I hope you're doing well. Laura closure. The word landed like a dull thud. Yeah, he muttered to himself. You wanted closure 2 years late. He rubbed the back of his neck, frustration blooming in a slow, familiar heat. He didn't want to think about her. He didn't want to revisit any part of that old life. He'd finally started finding his footing again. On the farm, at the market, in Claire's company. And now Laura wanted something. His stomach churned. The greenhouse door swung open. Reggie. Claire's voice floated up the stairs. You up here? He shoved the phone into his pocket instantly. Yeah. Come on up. Claire appeared at the top of the stairs, a bundle of recipe cards in hand. Her hair pulled into one of those, I tried, but life intervened ponytails that somehow made her look softer, more real, more reachable. I brought the new herb menu ideas, she said cheerfully. Your tomatoes inspired me. Then her smile faltered. You okay? She asked. You look like someone told you the basil unionized. Reggie forced a laugh. I'm fine. She gave him a look that said she absolutely did not believe him. He turned away, pretending to adjust a valve that did not need adjusting. Claire stepped closer. Reggie. He inhaled, slow and steady. Then, my ex emailed. Oof, she said immediately. Is it contagious? Should I stand back? Despite himself, he chuckled. She wants to talk. Claire angled her head. Do you want to talk? No. That sounds like a pretty solid answer. It's not that simple. Sure it is, she said, leaning against the workbench. She hurt you. She left you when you needed someone in your corner. You don't owe her anything. He swallowed. I know. But part of me, he searched for the right words. Part of me wants to reply just to prove I'm not angry anymore. That's still you giving her something, Claire said gently. Attention, energy, a window into your life. Reggie looked at her, surprised at the clarity in her voice. She shrugged. I've had my share of people come crawling back at convenient times, usually when they see I'm doing well. She nudged his arm. And you are doing well, Reggie, even if you can't see it yet. He exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. What did I do to deserve you being this reasonable? Oh, don't worry, she said. Give me time. I'll panic about something and become wildly unreasonable soon. He smiled until his phone buzzed again. Claire raised an eyebrow. Round 2. He didn't want her to see the screen, but she stepped beside him before he could turn it away. The new notification preview was clear enough. Laura, I'd really appreciate a chance to explain. Claire froze, and then her expression shifted. Not angry, not bitter, but crestfallen. Just for a moment. Sorry, she said quickly. I should give you space. You probably need time to think. No, he said instantly. Claire, wait. But she was already moving toward the stairs. I get it, Reggie. Really. These things get complicated fast. And I don't want to make things messier for you. They're already messy. She paused halfway down the steps. Then maybe you should talk to her. I don't want to talk to her, he insisted. Claire nodded, but her shoulders were tight. You don't owe me an explanation. She continued down the stairs. Reggie hurried after her, only to snag his foot on the irrigation hose he'd left coiled across the floor. He stumbled forward and grabbed the nearest thing for balance. The nearest thing was the misting system's main valve. The valve rotated. A powerful spray of cool water blasted directly into his face, soaking him from head to toe in 3 seconds flat. Claire spun around just as the water pressure maxed out and Reggie sputtered like someone caught under a collapsing roof. Oh my God! Claire clapped a hand over her mouth. Are you okay? He spat out a mouthful of mist. I think the greenhouse is attacking me. She rushed toward him, slipping slightly on the wet floor, stopping inches from his dripping form. She reached out, hesitated, then touched his arm lightly. I'm so sorry, she said. I shouldn't have just run off. You didn't run off, he said, blinking water from his eyelashes. I just looked like a drowned shrub and made everything worse. Her expression softened with a warmth that surprised him. You didn't make things worse, she said. The hose did. I swear this place has a vendetta. Claire laughed softly. Then, more serious, Reggie, I wasn't upset because of your ex. I was just caught off guard. I really like spending time with you, and I guess I didn't expect her to reappear. He stared at her. I like spending time with you too, he said. A lot. A warmth flickered behind her eyes. She stepped closer, fingertips lightly brushing his sleeve, water dripping to the floor. So what are you going to do about her email? She asked quietly. He looked down at her hand, then back at her face. I'm going to delete it. Claire let out a breath she'd been holding. Yeah, he said. The past doesn't get a second chance just because it suddenly remembers I exist. Her smile, small, genuine, relieved, made his chest tighten in a way that felt almost dangerous. Good, she murmured. The greenhouse hummed around them, warm light filtering through the glass. And for once, despite the water dripping off his clothes and pooling around his boots, Reggie felt grounded. Certain. Claire touched his wrist gently. You should change before you catch pneumonia. Probably. But, she added with a grin, you pull off the drowned look surprisingly well. He groaned. Please don't tell the rumor mill that. No promises. As he headed toward the stairs to dry off, Claire lingered by the doorway, watching him with a smile she didn't bother hiding. Whatever was happening between them was becoming impossible to ignore, and neither of them seemed inclined to stop it. Chapter 7 Festival of Figs. By mid-July, the orchard had transformed into a green tapestry. Lush rows of apple trees, stone fruit heavy on their branches, and at the far end, the prized cluster of fig trees that always seemed to draw more attention than anything else grown on the farm. And this year, for the first time in a long while, Reggie looked forward to the annual Fig and Farm Festival instead of shrinking from the thought of crowds. Mostly because he knew Claire would be there. The morning sun was warm but not oppressive, and the whole town seemed to buzz with festival energy. Booths lined the edges of the park, handmade candles, local honey, homemade jams, tie-dye t-shirts, and at least one table offering questionable essential oils with suspiciously dramatic names. Reggie set up his grandparents' produced table, arranging the figs front and center amid the herbs and vegetables. His grandfather hovered, tweaking his display choices with the precision of a general preparing for battle. His grandmother elbowed him lightly. Stop fussing. He knows what he's doing. I'm just making sure the boy doesn't hide the figs behind the parsley again. That was one time, Reggie protested. And it was windy. His grandmother waved a dismissive hand. Wind is not a reason to shame the figs. Reggie was about to respond when he spotted Claire weaving through the festival crowd, carrying a box of labeled containers. Her hair was braided loosely down one shoulder, her navy apron dusted with flour, and she had that determined stride that said she'd already been up since dawn working on something ambitious. She noticed him and smiled, bright, warm, and far too effective at derailing his entire train of thought. Morning, she said, setting the box on the table. Did I miss the ceremonial fig blessing? That's at noon, his grandfather deadpanned. It's not, Reggie muttered. It should be, his grandmother added. Claire laughed. Well, I brought my contribution to the festival feast. She opened the box. Inside were 6 containers filled with a vivid, glossy mixture of sliced figs, herbs, and honey. What is that? Reggie asked. Fig and rosemary topping, she said proudly. It's going over a goat cheese crostini I'm serving later. His grandfather whistled. Fancy. Delicious, she corrected. Reggie peered inside. And you made all this today? Woke up early. Needed something to keep my mind busy. He tried not to read too much into that, but her eyes flicked to him briefly, warm, lingering, before she looked back at the festival tents. She cleared her throat. So, The town committee wants us to demo a dish together. Us? Reggie asked. Together. Apparently we're their favorite new collaboration. Their words, not mine. His grandmother's eyebrows shot up with unrestrained glee. Reggie swallowed. Sure. Yeah. I can do that. You don't have to, Claire said quickly. If you'd rather not. No, he interrupted. I want to. Something easy and relieved slid across her features. Good. Then let's run through it before the crowd shows up. Are we cooking something? He asked nervously. No stove involved, she said. Just assembly. Low risk. His grandfather nodded gravely. Smart woman. They stepped behind the table, arranging ingredients on a wide wooden cutting board. Toasted crostini, fresh rosemary sprigs, goat cheese, and the fig mixture Claire had prepared. Ready? She asked. As ready as I'll ever be to cook in front of people. You'll be fine, she said. Just follow my lead. Following your lead is what got me sprayed by an irrigation hose. She smirked. Maybe, but it was a good look for you. The words struck him harder than they should have. Soft but confident, flirtation hidden under the guise of teasing. His pulse jumped, and he suddenly needed something to focus on besides her. Okay, he said, clearing his throat. Let's demo. She lifted a crostini. First step, spread the goat cheese. Gently. He mimicked her motion. His goat cheese blobbed in the middle like a disgruntled snowman. Claire bit her lip to stifle laughter. Maybe less pressure. It requires pressure to spread. Not that much. Then what is the correct amount? The amount that doesn't cause structural failure. By now she was definitely laughing at him. Not unkindly, but with genuine delight that made his chest feel lighter. They finished a few sample pieces just in time for the crowd to gather. A small microphone crackled to life, and the festival host announced, and now, a special demonstration from our favorite farm-to-table duo, Claire Meyers and Reggie Parks. Reggie's soul briefly left his body. Claire whispered, just breathe. I am breathing, he said tightly. Then breathe normally. You're doing that panic inhale thing. I don't panic inhale. She raised one skeptical eyebrow. Reggie, you inhale like a startled vacuum. He forced a steadier breath. The demo began, and somehow, despite his clumsy cheese spreading, the crowd loved it. They oohed and awed over the figs, asked about the orchard, asked about Claire's restaurant, and one older woman asked point blank if he and Claire were dating. Reggie choked. Claire smoothly answered, we're collaborating on recipes, then shot him a subtle side look that said, don't die on me now. When they finished, applause broke out. Real, enthusiastic applause. Reggie stared at Claire in disbelief. That actually went well. You did great, she said. You did great. My definition of great includes not letting goat cheese escape the bread. Hey, I improved. She laughed. You did. A warm silence stretched between them. Easy, comfortable, charged with something neither of them tried to hide anymore. Then she glanced toward her restaurant's booth. I should go finish setup. Want to come by later? I saved you a plate. He hesitated for exactly 1 second, long enough for old doubts to whisper, but the sight of her waiting, hopeful, dispelled them. I'd like that, he said. Her smile told him the answer mattered more to her than she let on. Claire left, weaving back into the festival crowd. Reggie watched her go, feeling, unexpectedly, something expand inside his chest. His grandmother sidled up beside him. You two make a good pair. Grandma. Oh hush, it's obvious to anyone with eyes. His grandfather nodded sagely. Even the figs approve. Reggie shook his head, but he didn't argue. Not this time, because for the first time in a very long time, he felt the ground under his feet, steady, warm, alive. And it had everything to do with a chef who laughed like sunlight through leaves and made him feel like his future wasn't a blank page after all. Chapter 8, Weather, Worries, and What Comes Next. Summer storms in the Midwest didn't believe in subtlety. They didn't creep in. They arrived like rowdy cousins kicking down the door. Reggie was in the orchard late that afternoon, checking the fig nets before the evening winds picked up. The sky had already begun to bruise, a thick purple smear across the western horizon. Birds fled the trees. The humidity tightened like a fist. His grandfather shouted from the barn. Storms rolling in fast. Tie down anything that isn't bolted. On it, Reggie called back. A few months ago, he would have met this moment with a nod of uncertainty. But now, working the land again, feeling the rhythm of the orchard, knowing his grandparents relied on him, he felt something steadier. Purpose, presence, strength he thought he'd lost. He secured the nets and sprinted toward the greenhouse as the first rumble of thunder shook the air. Inside, the familiar warmth greeted him. Earth, herbs, the faint hum of fans. He double-checked the irrigation valves, mindful of the yet unrecovered dignity from last week's accidental self-soaking. His phone buzzed. Claire, on my way. Storm looks bad. You home? He frowned. Why was she driving in this? He typed quickly. Reggie, heading into the greenhouse. You should stay put until it passes. Almost immediately. Claire, already halfway there. I'll be fine. Thunder cracked loudly overhead, rattling the rafters. He typed again, Reggie, Claire. Another message popped up before he finished. Claire pulled into the drive. Don't yell at me. He set his phone down with a groan. Of course she came. Of course she didn't wait for the weather to behave. The greenhouse door swung open, wind gusting behind her like a dramatic stage entrance. Claire stumbled inside, hair whipping around her face, clothes damp from the sudden downpour. Your weather is rude, she declared. You drove through that? He asked, incredulous. I wasn't going to sit around wondering if your greenhouse would blow away. He stared at her. You came to check on the greenhouse? She hesitated, then admitted, and you? Warmth bloomed beneath his ribs. Dangerous, hopeful warmth. Lightning flashed, bright enough to illuminate the entire room. The thunder followed quickly, too quickly. Claire winced. I hate storms. He stepped closer. You okay? Yeah, I've just never liked being alone in them. So I decided not to be alone. And you chose me? Her expression softened. Of course I did. A loud crack made her jump, instinctively grabbing his arm. Her fingers curled tightly around his sleeve. He swallowed. You're safe. We're fine in here. This place has survived worse. Your grandfather told me the greenhouse once withstood a tornado. It was barely a tornado. Then why did he use dramatic hand gestures mimicking its path of destruction? That's just how he tells stories. Claire huffed out an anxious breath but didn't let go of his arm. He guided her toward the center of the greenhouse, away from the trembling glass panes. Rain pounded overhead, the wind howling like something alive. But inside, surrounded by plants and warm soil and the soft glow of grow lights, everything felt strangely intimate. Claire's hand slid down his arm until her fingers found his. He exhaled. She looked up at him, eyes wide, uncertain, hopeful. Reggie, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you still sure about what you said last week? About not wanting to talk to your ex? Absolutely. Claire nodded slowly. Okay, I didn't want to complicate anything for you. You didn't complicate anything, he said gently. Her showing up complicated things. You make them clearer. Her breath caught. Really? Really? The storm hit its peak. Wind shrieking, thunder rolling so close it felt like the ground trembled. She stepped closer. I keep trying to tell myself to slow down, that you're still rebuilding, that I should give you space to figure out your life before I wedge myself into it. You're not wedging, but I feel like I am, she whispered. And I don't want to make your future blurry when you're just now getting things in focus. Reggie lifted her chin with gentle fingers. Claire, since I came home, you're the first thing that's helped anything come into focus. Her eyes softened. Reggie, and if I'm rebuilding, then you're part of that, whether we asked for that or not. Lightning flashed again, briefly bathing them in white, and this time neither of them flinched. Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. I want to kiss you. I want you to, he said. She closed the distance. The kiss wasn't rushed or explosive. It was soft, careful, full of everything they had been circling for weeks. Hesitation melting into certainty, humor shifting into warmth, fear dissolving under something stronger. When they finally parted, Claire rested her forehead against his. I've wanted to do that since you threw apples at me. I didn't throw them, he murmured. They staged a protest. She laughed softly against his mouth. Outside, the storm began to ease, the thunder moving farther away, the rain softening to a steady whisper. Claire exhaled. So, what happens now? We figure that out together, Reggie said. Slowly, if you need. Fast, if it feels right. We'll just move forward. The way things have been moving since you walked into that greenhouse and caught me destroying tomatoes. I remember that, she said fondly. You looked like a man betrayed by produce. It was a rough day. She kissed him again, quick and warm. This is better. He smiled. Much better. They stood there in the soft glow of the greenhouse, surrounded by rows of herbs and the earthy smell of rain-soaked soil. For the first time in years, Reggie wasn't thinking about what he'd lost. He was thinking about what he could build. With her. With this place. With whatever came next. And as the storm finally passed, leaving the world washed clean, he realized he wasn't afraid of the future anymore. Not even a little. Chapter 9, Building Something Together. By August, the orchard seemed to hum with life. The fig trees were heavy with fruit. Apples ripened into streaks of red and gold, and the greenhouse overflowed with enough herbs to supply half the Midwest. Reggie stood in the center of it all, hands on his hips, breathing in the scent of basil, sun-warmed earth, and something sweeter, possibility. The storm weeks earlier had changed something between him and Claire, not abruptly, not dramatically, but in fine adjustments like a lens sharpening until the whole picture came into focus. Now, instead of circling their feelings, they moved through them with curiosity and ease. She visited the farm every few days, bringing recipe samples, checking produce, helping brainstorm new ideas. He stopped by her bistro just as often, sometimes to deliver herbs, sometimes to fix a broken shelf in her pantry, sometimes just to linger in the doorway while she commanded her kitchen with the precise chaos of a woman who knew exactly who she was. They didn't rush. They didn't hide. And they didn't pretend to be something casual. It was something real. Something building. It was late morning when Claire arrived at the farm with a notebook tucked under her arm. She stepped into the greenhouse, smiling as she found Reggie kneeling beside a row of newly sprouted basil. "You talk to plants more than you talk to people," she teased. "They listen better." "That's debatable." She crouched beside him. "So, ready to pitch the new idea?" He wiped his hands on his jeans. "Ready enough. But if you hate it, please lie and say you love it for at least 10 minutes. I bruise easily." She tilted her head, amused. "Reggie, show me." He stood and gestured around the greenhouse. "I want to expand the herb starter line. Packaged kits. Small boxes with soil, seeds, instructions, maybe use recycled wood from the old barn. Sell them at the market and through your restaurant." Claire blinked. "Reggie, that's actually brilliant. You're obligated to say that." "No, I'd tell you if it was terrible. Honestly, I'd enjoy telling you." "Fair." She opened her notebook. Seasonal kits. A spring mix. A summer blend. Maybe a kitchen starter trio. This could totally work. He exhaled in relief. "So it's not ridiculous. It's ambitious," she said. "And smart." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I've been trying to imagine my future. Something I can build instead of something I'm just recovering from." Claire's expression softened. "You're not just recovering, Reggie. You're growing." He shook his head, embarrassed. "I don't know. Sometimes I still feel like the guy who lost everything." "You're not," she said firmly. "You're the guy who's building something new. On purpose. With heart. Do you know how rare that is?" Reggie swallowed. "Coming from you, that means more than you know." "Good," she said quietly. A warm silence settled between them, the kind that felt like a shared breath rather than an empty space. She reached for a basil leaf, gently rubbing its scent into her fingertips. Then she straightened. "Okay, let's figure out how to launch this. You'll need packaging, labeling, maybe a display for my front counter. And you're sure your customers will want it?" She tapped a finger against his chest. "I'm sure I want it. And that's a better sign than any focus group." He smiled wide, unguarded. "Thank you. For believing in your idea? For believing in me." Claire's expression wavered. Touched, vulnerable, brighter than sunlight through the greenhouse glass. Before either of them could say anything else, his grandfather's voice echoed from outside. "Reggie, Claire, come taste the peaches before the birds do." Claire laughed. "Saved by the fruit." "Don't encourage him," Reggie said. "He gets competitive about produce." "I like that about him," she said. "He has personality." "What does that say about me?" "You." She took his hand casually, naturally. "You have potential." He feigned outrage. "Potential?" "Oh, tons of potential." He laughed, letting her lead him outside. His grandparents were waiting near the peach trees, his grandmother holding a basket overflowing with blushing fruit. "There you two are," she said. "We were wondering if you'd fallen into the tomatoes again." "Once," Reggie muttered. "It happens once and suddenly I'm a legend." Claire winked at his grandmother. "I think it happened twice." His grandfather pointed at her approvingly. "Sharp girl. Keep her." Reggie choked. Claire grinned. His grandmother held out a peach. "Taste." Claire bit into it first and her eyes widened. "That's ridiculous. This is incredible." "Told you," his grandmother said, triumphant. Then she nudged Reggie. "Take her to the restaurant with a basket later. Inspire her." "Grandma," he protested, heat climbing up his neck. "Oh hush. Women like being given fresh fruit from men they're sweet on." Claire coughed. Reggie swore the earth tried to swallow him whole. But his grandmother just waved them both off, thoroughly satisfied with her matchmaking. Later that evening, Reggie helped Claire unload the peach basket in her restaurant kitchen. The dinner rush had ended, leaving behind the soft clatter of dishes and the hum of the walk-in refrigerator. Claire set a peach down gently. "You know, your grandparents are subtle as sledgehammers." "Yeah," Reggie said. "They really are. And you're surprisingly cute when you're embarrassed." His breath caught. "That's not helping." "Good." She moved closer, brushing his elbow. "Can I say something?" "Sure. I like this," she said softly. "All of it. The orchard. The kits. Working together. You." Reggie met her eyes, heart pounding. "I like you too, Claire. More than I expected to. More than I know how to explain." "You don't have to explain it," she whispered. "Just keep showing up. That I can do." He didn't overthink it. Not this time. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't hesitant like before. It was real, sure, warm enough to melt the last of his doubts. When they pulled apart, Claire brushed a thumb over his cheek. "You know, the town's going to notice." "Let them," he said. Her smile turned slow and bright. "Good answer." When Reggie drove home that night, the sky was clear, a soft stretch of stars over the orchard. His grandparents were asleep, the porch light glowing warmly across the field. He looked up at the greenhouse, its windows still lit, herbs silhouetted against the glow. For the first time since his life had fallen apart, Reggie felt something solid, something good, something earned rising in his chest. He wasn't rebuilding alone. He wasn't starting from nothing. And tomorrow, like today, he'd wake up with purpose, with excitement, with someone waiting to help build something new with him. It was more than he'd hoped for, and exactly what he needed. Chapter 10: The Orchard in Bloom. By the time late summer rolled around, the orchard felt like a place reborn. The fig trees were at their sweetest. The peaches glowed gold beneath the sun. The apples were ripening into streaky blushes of scarlet. The land hummed with the low, contented energy of a season at its peak. Reggie walked between the rows that morning with a crate under his arm and a sense of quiet awe. Something about the orchard in full bloom stirred a feeling he hadn't recognized in years. Not just appreciation, but belonging, stability, home, and more than that, hope. He paused beneath his favorite fig tree. Warm light filtered through its leaves, speckling his arms in shifting patterns. He touched the bark like greeting an old friend. "Looks good this year," a voice said. Claire approached, carrying 2 steaming cups. She wore a sleeveless blouse, hair loose and catching the sunlight in soft waves. She offered him a cup. "Mint tea," she said. "Fresh from your greenhouse. I would have brought coffee, but your grandmother confiscated the pot and told me caffeine was corrupting her grandson." Reggie laughed. "That sounds like her." Claire lifted an eyebrow. "She also said you slept in 20 extra minutes this morning. I did not authorize her to share that information." He took a sip, letting the mint cool his tongue. "You're up early." "I had prep work," she said. "And we still need to get ready for tonight." Reggie nodded, suddenly nervous at the reminder. Tonight was the first ever farm-to-table orchard dinner, an idea Claire had proposed weeks ago. A celebration of the orchard's harvest, held right here at sunset, with long tables set between the apple trees, lanterns strung overhead, and a menu built entirely from ingredients grown on the property. It was their collaboration, their statement, their shared beginning. But as the final day arrived, an unexpected flutter of nerves stirred in his chest. Claire watched him carefully. "You look like you're overthinking." "I'm not." "You absolutely are." He sighed. "Okay, maybe I am. A little." "Reggie." She stepped closer. "This dinner is happening because of you. Because of your ideas, your work, your heart. I'm just the chef who gets to show it off." "You're a little more than just the chef," he said. "Good," she murmured, cheeks softening. "Because I like being more." He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I'm glad you're doing this with me. I wouldn't want it any other way." By late afternoon, the orchard had transformed. Long wooden tables stretched between rows of apple trees, draped in linen cloth. Centerpieces of figs, peaches, tomatoes, and fresh herbs adorned the tables in mason jars and shallow wooden trays. Lanterns hung from branches, swaying gently in the breeze. The warm scent of roasted vegetables and grilled peaches drifted from Claire's portable kitchen station. Her staff moved quickly but not frantically, guided by her calm authority. Reggie's grandparents milled about, pretending not to supervise while absolutely supervising. "You did good, kid," his grandfather said, adjusting a lantern for the 4th time. "This looks like something off one of them fancy food channels." "You watch food channels?" Reggie asked. His grandfather huffed. "Only the good ones. Not those weird competitive ones where people yell at each other." His grandmother joined them, slipping a hand through his grandfather's arm. "He loves the baking shows. Don't listen to him." "Woman, that is classified information." Claire laughed as she approached. "Dinner's ready whenever you are." Guests began arriving, local farmers, restaurant regulars, market customers, even the eccentric woman who always tried to buy herbs in bulk and claimed basil cured heartbreak. They filled the tables with excited chatter. When everyone had settled, Claire stepped forward to introduce the dinner. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," she began. "Everything you're about to enjoy comes from this orchard, or from the hands of the people who tend it, including the newest addition to the team." She gestured to Reggie. He froze. The crowd applauded anyway. Claire leaned in and whispered, "Just wave." He did, awkwardly, prompting a few light chuckles. Then the courses began. Roasted tomato crostini with basil, peach and fig salad with rosemary dressing, herb roasted potatoes, fresh greens from the greenhouse, grilled chicken glazed in fig reduction, and for dessert, peach cobbler topped with chilled fig cream. Guests moaned in approval, delighted with every dish. Reggie watched Claire as she talked with diners, checking on plates, smiling generously. She floated through the orchard like she belonged there. Maybe she did. Eventually she circled back to him. "You okay?" "I'm great," he said, and meant it. "Walk with me." They slipped away from the tables, strolling toward the edge of the orchard, where the lantern light faded and fireflies blinked like floating embers. The night air was warm, quiet except for distant laughter. Claire stopped beside the fig tree. "Hard to believe how much has changed," she said softly. "A few months ago, you were just the guy returning home and learning how to water basil again. And you were the chef who caught me almost destroying a greenhouse. That was tragic. It was a learning experience." She smiled. "And now look at you. Building a business. Rebuilding your life. Letting people in. Letting you in, he corrected gently. She brushed her fingers against his. I know. I'm glad you did. A long, warm silence stretched between them. The orchard glowed under lanterns and starlight. Fireflies drifted in clusters. Somewhere behind them, his grandmother declared loudly that Claire's peach cobbler was the best thing she'd eaten since 1973. Claire laughed softly. She's going to adopt me, isn't she? She's already drawing up the paperwork. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Reggie, are you happy? He inhaled the scent of figs and rosemary and Claire's shampoo. Yeah, more than I expected to be. More than I thought I ever would be again. She exhaled long, relieved. Good. He turned so they faced each other fully. What about you? I'm happy, she said simply, and terrified, and excited, and I really want to see where this goes. So do I. He cupped her cheek. She leaned into his touch, and under the orchard canopy, surrounded by everything he'd rebuilt and everything he was learning to love again, Reggie kissed her. Not with urgency, not with fear, but with quiet certainty, the kind that came from roots, from growth, from choosing to bloom again. Later, as the last guests left and lanterns flickered low, Claire and Reggie walked hand in hand back toward the barn. What now? She asked, nudging him playfully. He squeezed her hand. We keep going. Slowly? She teased. He kissed her temple. Fast if it feels right. And does it? He looked at her. The way she moved easily beside him. The way she glanced up with laughter in her eyes. The way being with her felt like steady ground beneath sun-warmed leaves. Yeah, he said softly. It really does. The orchard rustled in agreement, leaves whispering in the summer breeze, as if welcoming the start of something new, something stronger, something honest, something built together. And for the first time in years, Reggie Parks didn't feel like he was starting over. He felt like he was finally starting. The end.